everybody. Welcome to the Buckeye Weekly Podcast. I am Tony Gerdeman, here as always with Tom Orr. Tom, how's it going?
Tony, it is another one of our very favorite shows, the contractually obligated Michigan Monday after they play a terrible, garbage, no good non-conference team. Tony, I think my favorite thing every week is trying to figure out which is the most important thing that we've learned from Michigan beating up on, basically a slightly upscale NAIA team. There's almost too many things to choose from.
Where do you even begin? I do like the fact that you said contractually obligated, because I've also written that as part of Michigan Monday this week, and that it's, we are finally done with this. And now we can move on to Rutgers. Now, before we don't want to get to Rutgers right now. That's who Michigan plays next week. We'll get to that later in the show. Right now, let's focus on what we saw in Michigan's rousing 31-6 win over Bowling Green, a Bowling Green Falcons team that didn't start. Starting quarterback Connor Bazelak went with their backup quarterback, and then he played for like a quarter and left with an injury. So that was and ended up going with their third quarterback, Hayden Timashek. The second quarterback, Camden Orth, was actually having some success against Michigan. He was 8 for 11 passing for 91 yards. I'm not saying he was going to lead them to a victory over Michigan, but Tom, he did lead them to all 6 of their points.
Do you remember last year when Quinn Ewers went down for Texas when they were playing Alabama? I thought, you know what? Basically the same thing here. I don't know if Camden North has a kombucha NIL deal, so it may not be a perfect one-for-one analogy. But listen, anytime you can beat a MAC team, not just a MAC team, but a middle to bottom tier MAC team, playing its third-string walk-on quarterback, Tony, you got to break out the fancy LED lights for that. That was, that is the kind of game that only comes around once a year, maybe, and you gotta make the most of it.
Actually, Tom, it's 3 times a year if you are Michigan's scheduler.
Oh, well.
I do have a question. How did a guy named Camden Orth end up at a state school? Isn't it maybe like Ivy or some private school somewhere?
Where did Perry Orth play? Perry Orth was a quarterback a few years ago, and I cannot for the life of me place where he was, but he was, I'm guessing that must be a relative, and I don't know, maybe someone getting off a boat at Ellis Island 200 years ago. One of my relatives stepped to the left line instead of the right line and ended up with a new last name, and I don't know, but yeah, it was uninspiring, and I mean we can talk about so many things, Tony, about this whole game, but I think my favorite was when Orth on the opening drive did his Jameis Winston tribute and threw it backwards. That was kind of like, I knew the final score before I was watching this game because we were obviously working during the actual game, but it was just kind of like, oh, I see exactly how this is going to go. And then it pretty much went exactly like that.
It did. And he was actually okay. Other than that, took a couple of deep shots. I think we've talked about the Michigan defense enough, honestly. Let's get to the heart of the matter, and that is JJ McCarthy throwing 3 interceptions in this game, and watching along on the box score as we're both at the Ohio State game, and seeing that JJ McCarthy at one point was like 3 of 5 for 2 interceptions, and it was a little confusing as to why the first interception in the end zone, in Michigan's end zone, and turned into a touchback. I think Sharon Moore, acting head coach, credited or essentially blamed the spacing on that one. And the tight end took his route too far into the end zone and carried a defender there. So there's a defender there to intercept him. And so if you want to give JJ McCarthy a pass on that one, that's fine. The other 2, though, Tom, were bad. And the second one came on a deep double post where he threw to the guy that was really covered, and instead of the guy that was totally uncovered, essentially, is Roman Wilson.
Yes. Yeah, Roman. Cornelius Johnson was the intended receiver on that one. That wasn't great. The one in the end zone, the receiver he was throwing it to was open, but there was another defender there that he just didn't see. The one to the second one, that was just very much, that was just, this is the guy I'm going to throw it to. Yeah, there's another guy there, but I mean, certainly this will work out just fine, and Cornelius Johnson will come down with it, and then he didn't. This is a little bit, the first two games were JJ McCarthy is exactly, he's really developed. He's really, the decision making's great. The execution's great. Everything's great. And, we didn't want to make too much of it there. I don't want to make too much of this from him because, sometimes they just if we're bored with this, imagine how they must feel. It might be a little bit of okay, we're going to sort of challenge myself to make this play that, I know I'm not going to be able to try against better competition. So I'm just going to chuck it and see what happens. So maybe he's just bored, but this looked, worryingly like some of the stuff that you saw from him, especially kind of in the red zone last year, where he would make these throws and they wouldn't all get picked off, but you'd make really ill-advised throws in the red zone where it's just, you have Blake Corum, you have a really good offensive line. You don't have to do this. And, that to me, maybe all of the problems aren't quite as fixed as it looked like they were through 2 weeks.
The third interception then is him scrambling to his left and then just heaving it up and getting it intercepted on the sideline. He had another pass that was tipped and nearly intercepted, could have been intercepted. And then he had a touchdown pass that was basically bobbled between the cornerback and Cornelius Johnson, a deep shot that was a 50-50 ball that both guys could have come down with. In another world, another time, another universe, this could have been 5 interceptions. And I don't know how you can have a situation like that against Bowling Green unless, and this is kind of my theory, as you were mentioning, it's just a bad game against an unserious opponent. There's really no concern of a loss. And so I would also equate it to you shoot pool in a weekly league, but against your little nephew or your son or whatever, you're going to shoot some masses against him because there's no danger of losing. So you're just trying stuff. I'm going to jump the 8 ball, things like that. I'm going to bank this, bank that. And he's kind of just doing that. He's like a quarterback hustler, basically, against Bowling Green, seeing what works, and it wasn't working. And I do also remember saying last week or writing it that you wonder if this non-conference schedule is going to create some unnecessary overconfidence. And I think there's some of that as well for McCarthy and some of these throws. And they weren't, not only were they bad decisions, they were bad throws. They didn't show off his arm strength. The second interception on that double post, it was just a mediocre throw that didn't show any kind of zip that you would expect from him and that he's capable of. And so I think the question, maybe the biggest question that you take away from this game is, who is the real JJ McCarthy? And I don't think it's the guy that throws 3 interceptions, but also I don't know. I don't think you could say it's the guy who's completing 85% of his passes either. I think it's more of that guy than the guy who throws 3 interceptions. However, we now know that he is again capable of this. And now that's 4 turnovers in his 3 games this year. That's 6 turnovers in his last 4 games. If you want to go back to last year, threw a turnover or threw an interception against Purdue. I don't know if he lost any fumbles in that one, but what we know now is that this isn't completely out of him.
No, it's not completely out of him. This is, I think there was a point where people were thinking, okay, is this going to be a year where he has 30 touchdowns and 3 picks? And I mean, I guess that's technically still in play, but he can't throw any more picks if he wants to do that. The one that kind of jumped out to me was one you mentioned earlier, where this was a touchdown throw. They ran a flea flicker. He heaved it up to Cornelius Johnson. The Bowling Green defensive back had the better position, had, I think, both hands on the ball at one point, and it ended up kind of getting batted up in the air, and Johnson catches it, and it's a touchdown, and everyone's excited, and it's like, man, oh man, you take that one off. That probably should have been intercepted. You take that one off his line, and he finishes 7 for 13 for 83 yards, 1 touchdown, and 4 interceptions. Let alone the other one you mentioned that could have made it 5 interceptions. That's let's see what it looks like next week against Rutgers. Because, and boy, what a statement it is that Rutgers is the barometer at this point of the calendar as we're getting ready to turn the page towards October. But, let's see what it looks like against a team that is at least halfway decent. This is going to be their version of Ohio State's Indiana game, where you played Youngstown State, whatever. They've basically played 3 Youngstown States so far. Now you play a conference team, and it's not a good conference team, but it's at least a conference team that is recruiting halfway decent players. You're not playing the third string, low level MAC walk-on quarterback. Like you have at least a competition with a little bit of a pulse. Let's see what he looks like in that situation. And maybe more to me, what might be more telling is not just how he looks, but what do they trust him to do? Are they just going to be leaning on the run game? And even if the run game's not working, they're still going to lean on the run game? Or are they going to trust him in the red zone? If it's 3rd and 7 in the red zone, are they going to be running the ball? Or are they going to trust him to put the ball in the air? They have played close games with Rutgers from time to time. If it's a close-ish game and it's 3rd and 7 in the red zone, are they going to trust him to throw the ball? Or are they going to try and get him out on the edge and try and have him run for it? Are they going to try and have Blake Corum do it? What are they going to try and do? Because what the coaching staff, they can say all the right things. What they do in the game is going to be what's maybe most interesting to me.
Yeah, will he continue to throw in the red zone? Will they let him throw coming out of the other 10-yard line? As we saw, I think in the season opener, they weren't ready for that yet. They were running the ball down there, even on 3rd and long. They were running from inside their own 5 rather than letting him throw the ball out of there. He finished 8 of 13 for 143 yards, 3 interceptions, 2 touchdowns, sacked once, 2 other carries in there for 12 yards. And I wouldn't be shocked if he's more involved in the running game on Saturday against Rutgers to continue to move the chains and get the ball moving that way. And then speaking of the Michigan running game, 169 yards rushing on 31 attempts, average of 5.5 yards per carry, 2 touchdowns. Those 2 touchdowns coming from Blake Corum, who went for 101 yards on 12 carries, the long of 54. That may have been the first carry of the game, one of the first couple of carries of the game where he does his thing and he's completely slippery, makes the first 2 guys miss, disappears for a second, and then pops back up and makes somebody else miss, and then eventually gets caught from behind. But this was more along the lines of the Blake Corum that we've been wanting to see, and not that he's been off. This is also, as we think we've said before, pretty much the same start that Michigan had last year running the ball, and so they're following suit this year. And then Donovan Edwards, I thought it was smart of them to get him involved early with the reverse, and then also doing some wildcat stuff with him, because right now, just running the ball for him between the tackles isn't going well. So they're trying some different things to get some momentum going. Like when you're in a shooting slump, and a couple of free throws will help you out. I think they're going to give him some free throws and help him out. So he was 9 for 50. Those 2 guys, 151 yards total on 21 carries. That'll win for you. But nobody else really of any importance on there. But there. And we'll talk about this time. I'll let you go on the running game, but only 44 plays on offense for Michigan.
Yeah, that's what I was just going to bring up was 13 passes, 31 rushes, 44 plays. That's, and it wasn't like Bowling Green was, had 90 snaps or something like that. Bowling Green had 21 passes and 36, so 57 plays for them. I mean, that's just a real slow, plodding game. And, it wasn't like Michigan did anything, or Bowling Green did anything on offense where they were incredible. Bowling Green had 24 yards, negative 4 yards, 12 plays, 62 for that first field goal. After that, 9 yards, 1 yard, 16 yards, negative 1, 0 yards, 1, 4, 3, and then 32 and 47. The last 16 or so minutes of the game, Bowling Green took up about 13 of them. But Michigan just never really got it going. And if you look at the net success rate stats, this was the second most lopsided game of the week. They were behind only Texas A&M against Louisiana Monroe. They were better. They were better in terms of net success rate than Ohio State was against Western Kentucky. but it was just so lifeless. The whole thing was just so lifeless and plodding. And, a lot of that net success rate is the fact that Bowling Green could do absolutely nothing. Bowling Green is bad on both sides of the ball in a way that Western Kentucky is not. Western Kentucky's offense has a pulse. So, it was just one of the least entertaining football games I can remember watching. It just, you had like just these like sort of flashes of like, okay, there was the drive where he hit two passes in a row. One was to Colston Loveland, and then he hit, I think, Roman Wilson for a touchdown or something like that. And JJ McCarthy did. And so it's like, okay, look, then he's fine. And he's okay. Now he's in a rhythm. And then they, I think that was right before the Quentin Johnson pick. And okay, they got the ball back, and then nope, nothing. They couldn't get anything really rolling on offense. But I don't know how much of this to chalk up to. They know they're playing crap. They don't need to worry about any of the, they were never in any real danger. Even when it was 7-6 in the second quarter, it never felt like, oh man, Bowling Green is about to bust this thing wide open. It was just, Michigan was just kind of playing with its food for the most part for most of the first half. But it's still, you would like to see all the same stuff that everyone was saying about Ohio State before last week. Like, you'd like to see Michigan just kind of crush someone. You're supposed to be, you're the number 2 team in the country. It's what the polls tell me. You're supposed to not be just sort of playing with your food like this.
No, for sure. They're scoring 32 points a game against this schedule. It's pretty disappointing, in my opinion. Looking in terms of the 44 plays, they had a touchdown drives of 4 plays, 5 plays, 1 play, and 3 plays. So they had some short drives. The irony in the 44 plays, then you think, well, they turned the ball over. They threw 3 interceptions. So clearly, you're going to lose some plays. But those were the 3 longest drives of the game for Michigan. They came on a 7-play drive, a 5-play drive, and a 6-play drive. That was when they were like essentially almost establishing something. Not that they were moving the ball terribly far, because those drives were 38 yards, 25 yards, and 28 yards. But they had more plays on those drives. And then, of course, you lose an entire possession when you muff a kickoff, which we can talk about that in a bit. I thought was brilliant by on Bowling Green State's part by kicking those pooch kicks. But the 44 plays, I went back and was like, when was the last time Michigan only had 44 plays before this? Because that is a number that is super low. And then in 2011, they had 39 plays against Western Michigan. I'm like, that is way too low. Something had to happen. So I went back and looked, and that was a rain-shortened third quarter game. And then I went back all the way to 1997, could find no other games of only 44 plays. There are a couple of 45s in there, but I wouldn't be shocked if this was the only time it's been 44 or in that range, because it's just a shockingly low number. And Bowling Green had the ball for like 9 minutes in the first quarter, 12 minutes in the fourth quarter, but not a ton of urgency on Michigan's part either. And this was, to me, just, we're finally done. We can begin the season now. Jim Harbaugh is coming back. I don't think anybody wanted to be there. And then they're like, let's play at night. And it's like, okay, sure, whatever.
It reminded me very much of the Ohio State. Ohio State played, I think, both Toledo and Akron in primetime on Big Ten Network, and it's been like, I think it might have been a Fox game. Was it a Fox game last year? It was. I think the Akron game might have been, or the Toledo game last year. Sorry, I'm confusing these two thrilling contests. I think the Toledo game last year might have been like a random Fox game or something like that. But either way, yeah, it's prime time, and it's like, why? What? No one needs to see this. They need to resurrect Jefferson Pilot and put these games on Jefferson Pilot, because this is just not anything anyone needs in prime time. But yeah, it looked very much like you said, like no one wants to be here. You're going through the motions. Just get it out of the way. Frankly, I mean, the fact that the 3 interceptions came on the end of relatively long drives, is that just JJ McCarthy getting a little bit impatient that, hey, they scored, they had the one where they recovered Chris Jenkins had the interception right by the goal line, and they had, 1 play, 2 yards. And then the next drive, they got another turnover, and they had, 4 plays, 2 yards, and kicked the field goal. But is that like you're expecting? Okay, I want to go deep. I want to do this. I want to chuck it deep on this team, and let's make some big plays through the air. And you're just sort of getting a little bit impatient. Maybe this is one of these games where good and bad. I have a lot of trouble putting too much weight on anything we saw because it doesn't feel like they approach this game nearly the way you would approach a game against Penn State or Ohio State or even like a Maryland.
No, maybe they were watching the last time Bowling Green played a top Big Ten school and Ohio State beat them like 77 to whatever. And they just thought this is something that is easy to do. But I'm with you. I'm expecting a completely different emotional Michigan football team and mentally. And I think they're going to be on point for what they will face against Rutgers. I did like, as I mentioned, the plan of attack of pooch kicking the kickoffs to the up men. One was caught by fullback Max Bredesen, and then he was hit and fumbled. Another one went right through defensive end Braden McGregor's arms, and he recovered it. So I thought that was really smart. Who cares whether you give the ball to Michigan at the 35 or the 25? This is an opportunity to create a turnover, and it worked once, so good job there. Was there anything else with the defense that you wanted to touch on, Tom? Because you mentioned Chris Jenkins. He had an interception there near the goal line. I thought Keon Sabb, who has been in for Rod Moore at safety, has continued to play well. He's done his job. This is just a very uninspiring Bowling Green offense. So it's not a lot to take. And they had 3 sacks in the first quarter. Michigan's defense did, and then nothing else the rest of the game. Should we start focusing on the 3 quarters without sacks? No, it doesn't. Tom, I'm not going to say who cares because we all care. Maybe why care?
Yeah, I think why care is a great motto for pretty much this whole thing. Just why? What are we doing? This is just a racket to charge people for parking. That it just feels like the whole month of September for Michigan football has just been like, well, look, if you just mail us the check, just mail us the $20 for parking, and no one has, we won't even make you go through this whole thing. But they did. They bought their fancy lights, and so they have to come look at the fancy lights. Okay, little lights are not twinkling, but that's okay. It was fine. Yeah, the thing that drove me nuts with Bowling Green in this game was they were kind of the polar opposite of what Western Kentucky did against Ohio State, where Bowling Green it had 4th and 1 on the +24. It's 7-3 in the second quarter. 4th and 1 on the road, chance to potentially either extend the drive or maybe even take the lead against Michigan. It's like, no, we're going to kick a field goal here on 4th and 1 at the +24, and that will cut it from 7-3 to 7-6 because this is a game we're going to win 9-7. Just you wait, unless it's 8-7 because maybe we'll get a safety, but Michigan is definitely done scoring. And it was just kind of like, come on, my dude. Like, look at what Tyson Helton did against Ohio State. Did it work? No. But he tried something. He was attempting to play interesting football. He was attempting to do something where his team had a chance to, if things broke right, his team had a chance to win. There's no world in which, you got 3 turnovers from JJ McCarthy. You got another fumble on a kickoff return, and you still were down 7-6 at that point, and 14-6 at halftime. You're not giving your team a chance to win. Like, don't try and we covered the spread. Like, okay, congratulations, that's incredible work on your part, but dude, try to win the game. That would be my advice to the Bowling Green coaching staff. But I mean, the defense on the whole, I mean, the Chris Jenkins play, that was really good recognition on his part that he was pass rushing and just very obviously saw what was coming and just kind of put on the brakes and stood there and just let the quarterback throw the ball directly to him. Always love to see the big man score a touchdown. Didn't quite get there, but throw it down on the 2 or something like that. That was impressive. I know Will Johnson is still out, and I know Mike Sainer still is good. I still have questions about the corners behind those 2 guys. I mean, Josh Wallace at one point, there was the Bowling Green receiver got behind him by like multiple steps in the end zone, and if it was not the pass was a little overthrown. probably still could have been caught. He was wide open. That Wallace was nowhere there. If you're just kind of looking at, okay, what's a potential point of concern? I think the secondary depth is at least a little bit of a point of concern, especially at corner.
Yeah, and we saw Bowling Green start the game by going deep on Keyshawn Harris, who was a former walk-on, and it's a tremendous catch by the Bowling Green receiver, but they attacked him right away. Mike Sainer still got beaten deep as well. So like your top three cover guys all let somebody get past them, and it led to a whopping 6 points. Bowling Green's not the program, not the offense that can take advantage of that, but they will eventually face some that can, and you hope soon Will Johnson is back to help them out. Because without him, I agree, there's some weak spots, and Mike Sanders still 2 tackles for loss, a sack. Like, he's great on the blitz as well, and he's sometimes invisible on that blitz. Quarterbacks don't see him, and he's going to be fine wherever he is. But I'm with you. I have concerns about corners still. I thought Josh Wallace had some nice run support plays as well, but when you see a cornerback get it beaten as badly as he did, that's something that you just put in the back of your mind. And okay, what did they do? Let's see if we can do that with better players, something like that for whatever offense will be facing them. I don't know that Rutgers can really capitalize on that. They're going to try. I guarantee you they're going to try, but they're also going to do, I think, what Bowling Green did and milk this clock and have this game shortened. They're going to try to get Michigan under that 44 number. They're going to try to move the chains as slowly as possible. They've got the number 1 rushing attack in the Big Ten right now, which is, that's what keep chopping means, Tom. You keep chopping and until you get that 4.8 yards per carry or whatever they're averaging right now. But they're going to try to control the ball. Gavin Wimsatt, the quarterback, is a mobile guy. So I'm interested to see how the defense does against him, picking up third downs and things like that, because I think that will help Rutgers to maintain the football. I don't think they have enough offense to win this. I wonder if this is where Michigan finally realizes themselves and it's like, okay, now we are the 49-point explosion and we play our best football. And you just, okay, this is why Michigan keeps landing at number 2 in the AP poll, despite not playing like the number 2 team in the nation. I wonder if that's what we finally see here, or if that's not something you can turn on against a team like Rutgers, which is trying to make you look as bad as they do.
Well, Michigan being number 2 is kind of weird to me because there have been plenty of other teams that have looked good that I don't understand why Michigan has, again, I'm not worried about Michigan. I don't think Michigan is a bad team, but if we're doing resume ranking, and it seems like there are a lot of voters who are, I don't know why Michigan's getting the benefit of the doubt on those ballots. And this is one of these, we're talking about this because the game was crap and boring, and this is something we can talk about. One of my notes is, where does Mr. Brightside rank on stadium sing-alongs, ? So maybe we'll have time to get to that. Who's to say? So much to talk about this week. But, I don't think Michigan is at the point where it's like, well, they're Alabama, so you rank them until they lose. You give them the benefit of Georgia. Like, I don't think that's probably where they quite are yet, and they haven't played anyone and haven't looked great not playing anyone. And again, for about the 5th time, it's not a concern yet, but it seems odd that they're getting the benefit of the doubt in a way that some of the other teams at the top of the poll don't seem to be right now.
And I tweeted about that on Monday, and my theory is because not even the voters are watching Michigan right now because of the schedule. There's no point in watching them. So you just assume, well, I don't want to be wrong about my number 2 ballot, so that's where I'm going to keep them. Now, they have watched Ohio State, and they moved Ohio State from 3 to 6 based on the levels of the uninspiring wins that the Buckeyes have had. This is not about Ohio State should be this or that. Put them wherever you want. And really, the whole rankings, as you said, it is what it is. We need something to talk about. Tom, also, Jake Butt, I really, really enjoy. I think he's really good at this job. He's good on the radio. That is somebody who's just going to continue to do more and more in this business. Do you have any other thoughts on this game? Any Jake Butt, AP, Rutgers, sing-along songs? Sweet Caroline, I still like. I don't care if people don't like it.
Yeah, well, you're a middle-aged white person, so you are contractually obligated. We're going to start and end this show with contractually obligated. And Tony, you are contractually obligated to have Sweet Caroline at the top of your list. 3 words to wrap this up with, Tony. Bum, bum, bum.
Thank you, Tom, for very much thanking me for that song.
Did you see the West Virginia version of Sweet Caroline, the Sweet Caroline sing-along?
Yes, Tom. I was trying. Should I mention that?
That is the actual number one sing-along song in stadium. The Red Sox don't do it that way, but boy, West Virginia does that with a grace and style that only the Mountaineers can manage.
Those are the 3 words that I thought you were going to mention to me. So I was taken back when you didn't, because I thought that would have been a tremendous way to end this show. So we'll end it this way instead. I want to thank you all for tuning in. As always, you can find us at BuckeyeHuddle.com. Please become a member. Say hello to us there on the message board. Check us out at YouTube.com/BuckeyeHuddle. Of course, Facebook.com/BuckeyeHuddle. And as again, thank you all for joining us, and we'll talk to you guys later.